Guest is Gerald Celente of TrendsResearch.com, also the publisher of TrendsJournal. Gerald, if I was going to read a headline in the TrendsJournal today, what would it be?
Equity markets start off year on down note.
And with the equity markets down, is this the feared start of the slide down, the correction?
It is. It's the, a couple of things happen. Tracking trends is an understanding of where we are, how we got here, and where we're going. And you go back to this past June in 2013, and the Fed announced that they were going to, quote, taper. And they make up these words. Sequestering was another one. There's no such word, but they made that one up. And,
I wondered where the jury was.
Yeah. So they're going to cut back on their buying, how many million? $85 billion worth of U.S. bonds and mortgage-backed securities each month. And, of course, that was the only reason why that we have any rebound in our economy, particularly the equity markets, because that's where all that money flowed, plus the record low interest rates. So now, at the end of the year, the Fed announced, just like during Christmas time when there's not a lot of hustle and bustle going on, that they were going to start paring back this month, January. And now we see the results. First of all, what happened, you see, back in June when they hinted that they were going to do it, they flooded the news media with their shills and lackeys, saying that, well, we really don't mean it, we may not do it, we may possibly do it, if we do it, we're not going to do it a lot. So markets calmed down a lot after going into a bit of a shock. And then when they announced that this time, as I said, it was the Christmas holiday, not a lot happening, markets spiked up, went back down, boop. And now reality's setting in. The only reason why there is any recovery, as I said, is because of all the stimulus and record low interest rates. Now with the tapering taking off, we're seeing the global markets retract. And especially the emerging markets, we're down already over 3% just in the first few days of this year. And you're looking at equity markets around the globe. And you're also looking at interest rates going up, particularly in the 10-year bond, the yield going up over 3% in the U.S. So what all this means is that whether it's China, whether it's the UK or European Union, they cannot sustain this. As a matter of fact, the news just out this week is that the EU is going to keep their interest rates at their record lows. You cannot have this growth of any magnitude without a lot of cheap money flowing into the system. It's showing up. So we believe they're going to try another round of tapering after the end of January when they have their Fed meeting, and it's going to cause some real serious problems, and they're going to come up with a new name for for stimulus. They won't call it quantitative easing. We have a new Fed chair now in, Janet Yellen. Maybe she'll make up a new name.
Wow, so we're playing the name game, but the blame remains the same.
Yes, again, I'm not saying this, as, just making, comments off the cuff about what's going on over here. These are facts, and you could, anybody could read them, and that is, when you even listen to people like this guy Andrew Husser, who was the Fed official, and this isn't from the World Socialist website. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Here's his quote. I can only say I'm sorry, America. As a former Fed official, I was responsible for executing the centerpiece program of the Fed's first plunge into the bond buying experiment known as quantitative easing. The central bank continues to spin QE as a tool for helping Main Street, but I've come to recognize the program for what it really is, the greatest backdoor Wall Street bailout of all time. That's a quote from 11 November 2013. So that's where all the dough's gone. That's why the world equity. And again, don't listen to me. Look what's going on over there in Japan with Abenomics. Another scam. They're dumping trillions of yen into the system. You look at the data, there's still a terrible economic situation. But hey, that Nikkei was doing great up until a few days ago.
Does central banking provide this kind of volatility? And is there an opportunity now for people to profit from all these mistakes?
Well, I don't give financial advice. I believe that you're going to see another round of stimulus worldwide, even in China. They're backpedaling already. They have a cash squeeze going on. They say they're not going to help the shadow banking. Shadow banking now is accounting for about 50% of all the new loans. And I love it. That's another white shoe boy name for loan sharks. These guys are charging like up to 40% interest rates. And so now they're pulling back, and they're not going to be as stringent as they said they were. So my belief is that with the next round of stimulus by whatever other name, you're then going to see another spike in gold and silver prices. That's my best forecast that I can give, considering the information that's available, because you never know what's going on behind the scenes.
China, of course, is the very secret bamboo curtain country that it always was. They just appear to be open right now, don't they?
Yes, but they're still in better shape than the U.S. As a matter of fact, one of the trends for 2014 that we have in the TrendsJournal, is going to be out in just a few weeks. We put out the preliminary already, is Chinatown. And we go on to show how, in 1960, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the U.S., warned us, the world and the Americans, that the military-industrial complex was taking over the country, we had a GDP of $520 billion. China's was $61 billion. Now we fast forward to 2012, as last year's the numbers have been tabulated. And the U.S. still tops the list at $15.6 trillion, but guess what? China's number 2 at $8.52 trillion. So you can see how times have changed. And so what we're looking at is the United States. We have $17 trillion plus in national debt. China, of course, has debt too, but the big difference is they're sitting on almost $4 trillion worth of foreign exchange reserves. And I have to tell the Canadians what's going on over there. You got a lot of Chinese people coming over and buying property. Their yuan is increasing against the dollar and the Canadian dollar, and they're buying up assets really cheaply compared to what's costing them over in their own country. Plus, a lot of people want to leave there. They have 1.3 billion people, pollution problems, congestion problems, and pending government problems.
And of course, if you want to have more than one child, one of the rules for doing that is you have to purchase over $300,000 worth of foreign real estate.
So there you go.
Well, if you want to have kids, you have to go buy property somewhere.
Yeah, and what they're doing is they're buying up everywhere, whether it's Japan, Australia, Canada, U.S., Singapore. Singapore's Chinese. Yeah, so is Malaysia's turning that way too. I mean, that's Singapore. And matter of fact, Myanmar, that's going to be one of the big hot ones. But there's going to be a lot of tension in the meantime. But again, Vietnam as well. I was in Vietnam when it first opened up in 94, 95, and you can see it was already Chinese, although they call it Vietnam. The Chinese are the business people, and you can see the deals being bought up, whether it's here in New York with the $5 billion Atlantic Yard apartment project, which is the biggest project in New York probably over the last 2 decades, to buying up the J.P. Morgan Chase Plaza in the heart of Wall Street, to having a big ownership in the GM building, on and on. And so there's buying up farmland in Ukraine. It's nonstop. So when you look at what's going on, all this is, the bottom line is cheap dough. And if they tighten up on the money, you're going to start seeing a real economic shockwave hit, and we believe the shockwave will hit between now and the end of the second quarter of 2014.
China is snapping up all the available land around the planet, also all the physical gold on Earth that was produced last year. What is their long-term plan, do you believe?
Business. It's business. The North Americans, NATO, the Westerns, they got war on their mind all the time. Mideast, it's business. And as I mentioned to you, we're writing this piece, and as I'm writing the piece, all of a sudden it hit me. I remember as a kid hearing, with Mao Zedong, hearing about the paper tiger, that America was a paper tiger, and I looked it up, and sure enough, he used it to describe American imperialism. Hey, you want to start a war in Afghanistan? I got a better one. Let's go to Iraq. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. I'll tell you, even though I'll lie. And then with those other wonderful wars, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, Oh, and Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, you remember his winning war, the Libyan War. We won't call it a war. We'll use the official propaganda name for it. A time-limited, scope-limited kinetic action. Yeah, so when you look at the United States squandering its resources, it's exactly what Mao Zedong said in 1956. When he described American imperialism, he said, quote, in appearance, it is very powerful, but in reality, it is nothing to be afraid of. It's a paper tiger, superficially powerful, but prone to overextension, leading to collapse. And that's the dragon. So they're in business. They've been around a long time. While the United States is playing, and North America playing these stupid chicken hawk games with a bunch of lunatics leading the charge. You can go back now, and you can see a parallel to just before World War I, when you had a bunch of moron politicians and military people that led the war into, quote, the Great War, one of the most stupid wars other than the other ones I just mentioned to you. That was totally avoidable. Hey, let's go around the world and look. Lovely times going over there in Thailand, aren't they? Millions of people out in the streets and they're not leaving for weeks. Oh, little riots in Bangladesh. Just killed a couple, 100-something. Oh, over Egypt. You know, the military coup. Oh, let's be proper. Don't call it a military coup. Washington said it's not a military coup, even though the military took over. And, of course, it's a civil war. And there's a civil war in Libya, a civil war in Syria. There's a civil war in Yemen, there's a civil war in Bahrain. It's ready to erupt in Saudi Arabia, pitchfork movement over in Italy. People taking to the streets continually, Portugal, Spain, Greece, same thing. You go around the world, south of the border, the Mexicans are very upset taking to the streets because the government's going to privatize their natural resource, the most beneficial thing they have, petroleum. And I love that word, privatization. That means selling expensive resources to your friends for bargain basement prices and getting a kickback. I'm not 6 years old. They do it everywhere. And then you go down to Brazil, Argentina. People are taking to the streets continually. You go around the world. Oh, look what's going on in Turkey. Wonderful time going on over there. The leader's at an all-time low against the dollar and other currencies. And there's a revolution pending there as well. It hasn't stopped since this summer, and things are getting worse. Oh, I forgot going over Ukraine. That's one of my favorite. People are taking to the streets because they want to join the European Union. Brilliant. You could become like Spain, maybe Greece. How about Italy? Oh, yeah, 41% youth unemployment. Maybe you like Portugal a little better. You know, I mean, come on, what is this? You know, it's a more stupidity. Again, looking for a political solution from an economic problem. And then you keep going around the world, Bulgaria, Romania. Oh, I forgot Africa, Central Africa, Sudan, Congo. Oh, Mali. Oh, the French, they can't get over that. They came back in at the end of last year, the beginning of last year, and they were going to fix the problems over there and there. What did they call it before? I think it was, French Sudan. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, they can't get over that colonial trip. So anyway, you're looking now around the world, and you have morons like Cameron and Obama, Bush before him, Sarkozy before Hollande. You have all of these very incapable people. And again, this is not rhetoric. Hey, how about Obamacare? You want to see a major failure? Look at that. How could anybody put up a program like that continually fails in the 21st century that looks like a high school science class put together? So it's failure at every level. Hey, how about fighting a war on drugs? Everything they do, they turn to failure, and we have sociopaths and psychopaths running the show. So we're looking a lot like, pre-World War I. Let's talk about the Duck Dynasty. You know, I didn't even know there was this thing. I looked up the number. 9 million people watch the show out of a country of 316 million people. They got this other thing going on with this other blowhard over here, next to us over here in New Jersey, this guy Christie, because they didn't like a mayor in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and they tied up the traffic lanes going over the George Washington Bridge into New York. Hey, yeah, but how about what's going on in Iraq? And the United States now sending more arms and ammunition